I'm here with Mary Hettmansperger today, and we're going to add hinges to lockets and other pieces so that you can create pieces that open and shut.
Yes, and a lot of movement and dimension, and they're very fun.
Well, let's take a look at this necklace. This is an example of how to use the hinges at the top.
Right. This one actually I create also a hanger out the top, and this one, as you can see, opens up quite nicely, and it works really, really well.
Cool, yeah, and I like how you create a little window too, so you can see the image inside.
Right. Okay. Well, the first thing you want to do is get the metal nice and soft. So the way you do that is with heating it. So we're going to take a piece of copper, and what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to put a patina on this right from the get-go, and I do that with some gel flux. Okay. And so what I'm going to do is take some flux, and small amount, just a very small amount, and I'm going to put it on this stamp like so, and I'm going to come in and press this down, and then what I can do is I can either use a second stamp on the top, or I can just do whatever with the paintbrush. So I'm going to just paint.
Okay, and so are the stamps just going to create some texture? You're not really
They're not creating
a picture, right?
Like texture. No, I'm going to get a picture.
Oh, okay.
So what I'm doing is I'm creating some color, basically. Yeah. So I'm going to take this off of here. And what I use is just this regular plumber's torch, and just be real aware that you're dealing with flames here.
Safety precautions.
Safety precautions. But we're going to heat this till it's kind of a glowing color. So it takes a few minutes. You want to make sure it gets nice and glowing. I'm going to heat this. And then I'm going to quench it, and you want to make sure that you also quench your pliers, because you can tell they're very hot. So you want to get rid of those, and then you've got this nice piece of metal. And here's my paper towel.
Oh yeah, so you can see how the color came out, and it really did make an impression.
And you get some interesting, you get some interesting contrast. You also get more reds and pinks. So it's a great way to get some color. So let's lose the torch for a minute here.
Okay.
And we may borrow it again here. So now I have this piece of metal, and I can cut it. It makes it really nice to cut. So I'm going to cut this one straight down the center. And what you've gone from is a piece of metal that's actually very stiff and very hard to one that's actually very soft. So it's going to really react well to whatever we do. So at this point, usually what I do is on one end, I will take off the sharp corners. And these scissors work great because you can just, kind of go in and really shape the metal.
You don't have to do a lot of filing, right? No.
This metal is a 24 gauge, and so it really, really does well with the scissors.
Do you always need to use copper for this?
No, you can use silver.
You can do anything.
And I've got silver examples. We'll get rid of these little shavings here. Okay, so now I have my two pieces, and what we're going to do is we're going to actually create a hinge at the top.
Okay.
And to do that, what you want to do, and this is like really important, you want to cut an even number to create an odd number of tabs. So what I do is I usually go in about 1/4 inch on both sides. So that's my 1, 2. And then I usually eyeball it, 3, 4.
Okay, but if you wanted to be really specific, of course, you can measure it out.
Right, so 1, 2, 3, and 4. So then the next step is on one of these, you're going to actually break off number 2 and number 4. And what I do is I use bent nose pliers, so I bend them back, then I get the bent part really nice and close, and then I just bend it back and forth really fast.
You're sneaky.
Well, it's way easier than...
It's fast.
It's fast. It's fast. Come in again and bend like that. On this one then, I'm going to cut off 1 and 5 just because I can.
Okay, so you want the opposite.
Right. And number 3. Now, before you try to fit these together, you need to hammer, because this is very, very soft metal, so you want to make sure that this is going to be a good hinge. It's not going to come apart.
Okay, so now you're going to work harden it back.
I'm going to work harden it back, so I just use a ball peen hammer, and I choke way up on it so that I'm not all over the place. So I'm going to focus really right in that area. I'm hammering that flat. I'm going to come in here and hammer this one flat. And then two things are going to happen. You're not going to fit it in immediately because obviously I didn't measure.
It's not perfect.
But also I just hammered it flat. So the goal now is for this to pass through each other. So the next thing I do is I just come in and I'm going to taper all of these tabs.
Okay. And this is a place here where you can really take your time because you want this to fit perfectly.
You do.
Or
and
as close to perfect and still look organic, right?
Exactly. And the reality is that until you've done this as many times as I have, probably it's not a bad idea to measure. And a way you can measure is, hold on, oh, see, I'm good.
That looks good.
So what you can do is cut, which I can show you here. You can actually cut one, use it for a pattern for the second one.
Oh, that's a good idea.
And I just mark it with a Sharpie.
Right,
so that
you have your own template.
You don't really have to still measure, but you've got them exact. So once you get to this point, you want to take a pair of long needle nose pliers. And what I do with these, I got to figure out which one is the front and the back. All right. So what I do with these is I'm going to bend this all at the same time. So I'm just, and when I mean, I'm going to gradually curl it. I'm not going to bend it straight up. I'm going to actually just have it at a curled position.
Oh, okay.
Because what happens is if you bend it, you've created too much memory already.
If you roll it all the way around,
right.
You mean?
Right.
Okay.
So I'm going to slide these two together. And that's basically my hinge. So now I have to create the bar that goes in between them. So there's several options. What you can do is you can take 16 gauge, or even this is just steel wire that you can get from the store, and this is like they call it rebar wire. So it's very nice. It hammers really well. The only thing is when you're hammering, and I already have this hammered, I actually, again, pull way up on the hammer, and I hold it, and when I hammer straight down first, and then I pull to create a nice big,
so then you get your flare.
To get a nice flare, because you don't want the hinge coming out.
Right.
Then if you want, we can borrow we can get the torch again. We can also use 16 gauge, and we can burn a ball on the end. Now, I've already burned one ball. I'm going to show you how to connect up the second one. What you want to do is you want that ball to be, probably a 1/4 inch longer here. Well, it's always hard to kind of figure where do you burn that second ball, but I always figure 3/4 of an inch to where I want to end up being. So if I measure that, I'm going to cut it here because it's going to eat up. That gauge of wire will eat up about 3/4 of an inch. So I'm going to come in here like this, and my pliers, let's see, here they are. It's always good to use a nice heavy-duty pair of pliers. Now on 16 gauge, you want to get quite a bit of the wire in the flame because it takes a lot to burn the ball.
Okay.
A lot of heat. So you want to heat that up.
Oh, there it goes.
Now, if you notice, I quenched it really fast. So if you quench the end of the wire, you're going to get a nice red end. If you let it air dry, like on this side, or let more air, it'll oxidize and it'll get black. Yeah. So we can move that back. And so now I'm going to take this, and I'm going to drop. I'll just use the steel wire here. I'm going to drop this in like this. And what I do now is I take bent nose pliers, and I'm going to hold this up, and I actually found it's way easier to do it in midair. I overextend it so that you're not trying to fight it. And then I take the bent nose plier tip, and I gradually do one at a time, and I turn it around. And if you'll notice in the very beginning, I'm pulling away. And I've just found that this works a little bit better. And I don't get one of them ahead of the others, so I don't totally bend one down. This creates a really nice hinge.
So that's going to help it open and close more easily too when it's finished.
So now, when I can't go anymore, so I can't do this, then I come to the front.
So all of your exposed edges are totally tucked under.
Yep. And you want to make sure, and what happens is that then it really works really nice. And just keep that in mind that this is your, easiest place to move. And the reason I say that is because if I wanted to make this style here, and this is, whoops, this is kind of important. If I made this style, as you notice, you see the hinge. So I would actually bend this part back because this is the part that moves the most. So if I'm doing then as a top, then this part moves the most. I don't know if that makes sense, but you don't want to have like it like this in the front. You want to be able to see the hinge. This particular hinge,
it needs to be
it has the most range of movement, yeah. Okay. So now we've got basically the part ready to go.
Our basic structure.
Yeah, the basic structure's done. So at this point, you can come in and now we kind of hammer the edges a little bit. And I spend a little bit more time than I am right now, but you want to get them nice and smooth, get rid of any burrs. The other thing I like to use is steel wool, so a lot of times I'll come up and that makes them really nice. Rather than filing, sometimes metal filing on filing makes it sharper rather than smoother. So this creates a nice edge. If you notice, I didn't really do anything to the inside because I'm going to cut a hole in this.
Okay.
So I'm going to show you how to do that. And this is just a disc cutter. And what I have found is that disc cutters can either can be brilliant or they can lose their stuff really quick, lose their cut. So I'm going to open this up. I'm going to slide this in. I'm going to drop it down, tighten it up. And you want to pick out the corresponding circle. And sort of my rule of thumb is I want to let it just drop in gently. I don't want to really shove it in because sometimes you can get the cutter off and it creates havoc. And the other thing I do is I use like an acrylic hammer rather than a metal hammer. I found that it disperses the blow better. So I want to come in like this, and this is where I'm going to choke way back on the hammer because I want the weight of the hammer to do the work. So, and then I always let it fall through, and then I let it go. A little off.
You have your little window.
I have a little, and I totally wanted it to the right.
Asymmetrical.
Totally wanted it to the right.
We want to talk about rivets too, so let's not forget.
Oh, okay. So actually, once you get that done, then you can actually take this to the dapping block with a little bit bigger hole and flare it out.
Oh, yeah.
And I've got an example of that right here.
Okay.
And the top on these is really easy. I just use 18 gauge wire. Take it around, make a little top.
To make your hanger here.
So that's the finish of that. Now, for doing your little rivets and stuff, a lot of times I want to put something inside. And I'm just going to use this one here that's already got the flare. So I'm going to take a piece of mica. And mica's nice because you can cut it just with scissors.
Well, and it makes great windows.
Makes great windows, creates a little protective area. Take a little picture here.
So you could use anything at all.
You can use anything at all. And I've even, over here I've got, and this is where I did a little weaving with copper foil and birch bark. Now I'm going to come in, I'm going to drop this in here and put this here. Nice thing about mica, also when I go to putting in I'm going to put in a little eyelet, is I'm going to cut my hole. And
there it is over there.
There's over there. Good job. And
I can go through all the layers.
You can go through both layers. The mica, even though it seems like it's crazy, stupid, strong, it's really not. The other little trick that I do is I'll a lot of times take a little bit of glue and put it on here. Let's see, I've got some right
just
here.
so you can hold it in place.
Just so, and it's really not like gluing. It's not cheating. It's just to hold the picture in place while you're working, just so you're not fighting it. All right, so I'm going to put that in there. I'm going to put this in here. All right, now what I'm going to do is I've got a piece of 20 gauge wire, and what is very helpful is if you have either really great eyes, and if you don't, because I don't, having a little magnifier is very helpful. So I'm going to move this out of the way. All right, so to be able to do this, it's much easier under the magnifier. And what I'm going to do with this 20 gauge piece of wires, I'm going to hammer it just a tad so that I can take an eyelet, I can slide it on, and it stops.
Oh, okay.
And what'll happen then is when I put it together under here where I can actually see it, which is nice. So now I want to come in like this. And on this, it's really quite easy because you've just got this that you have to flare out. And I use the ball peen part of my ball peen hammer just to open it up. And then you have your little eyelet.
That's perfect.
Yeah, and you can see it,
Looks
which
good,
is
yes.
even nicer.
Right.
That's even the best part. So I'm going to have you take that.
Okay.
So now that you've got these, what you can also do with the hinges, which is great, is you can actually take these hinges, use them as a design element.
Oh yeah, because it's right here along the center.
Right.
So it doesn't even have to be something that opens and closes.
Right.
That's a great idea.
Exactly. This one is a little bit different. It actually, when I've created this, I actually take out that, so I had 1, 3, and 5 tabs. Well, instead of leaving 1, 3, and 5, I leave 1 and 5, 2 and 4, break off the middle one, and create a hanger out the center.
Oh, good idea.
So you have a built-in sort of hanger.
Yeah.
These little earrings over here, same thing. These are, they're just hangers, but they're part of a hinge. And these don't have any back. They're just like a little bit of the same concept of just breaking off that,
right.
opposite one.
Creating tabs, I guess
creating tabs. And here's a side one too that's really quite nice.
That looks good too. And this one, I like how you did the decorative spiral at the top.
Yeah.
You've got your ball at the bottom, spiral at the top. That's fun
and you
too.
can always add in, like this one's got a little bit of beads. You can always add in beads and stuff, and
yeah, that looks
embellish it however you want.
Right. Well, these are some really great ideas. Let's take a look though. You brought more.
I did. So we've got, this is where I've used the dapping block that I was telling you about, where you could flare out the holes. So you cut the holes, then flare them out. This one is really kind of all about the hinges. I also used the little eyelets. I went ahead and I did a sawing little
I was going to say, what did you use for the motif in the middle? You sawed that out? I
sawed that out, and you can even see where the saw went in, and it's fine. And then I created the hinges, just being part of the design for the piece.
And that one looks like it has more texture too on the background.
It does. That one actually is just using a texturing hammer. So that one I just lightly heated it to get it annealed, but then I turned around. And also you'll notice too, I hammered the ends of the wires where I created the little balls. I hammered those down.
Yeah, that looks good.
Kind of created a disc look. This one here, again, is just more about a hanger. Same thing with this. This one, again, is the front one. And then this one's kind of unique. I did actually two hinges. So I created a hinge, and then I created a front hinge just so that I had a little window.
So you can open the whole piece?
You can open the whole piece.
The window that's on the front?
You can open the whole piece. And then you can also just open the little hinge on the front.
Oh, that's cool.
And this was not done with a saw. That was just done with scissors. I went in and cut the triangle. And then, as you can see, I did this little repair there across that line with the little eyelet and another little piece of metal.
It all works layered together.
It does.
These are some really great ideas. I love the color and the new techniques. This is
well, thank you.
Great. Yeah, can't wait to have you back.
Well, thanks a lot.
Thanks, Mary.